Alright, who was your favorite teacher? Whatever. Alright, who was your favorite teacher? Whether they be your teachers in your high school, in your elementary school, or your professors at your university. My own favorite teacher was a teacher when I was in grade 3. Her name was Miss Pinky. It's so weird talking about this. She was young. She was she was hot. She had like blonde hair, and then like she was just, oh my god, damn. Every boy at her school liked her. I was like 8 years old. I was like, whoa. And she like dressed, appealing as well. So if you're seeing this, yeah, after all these years, you're still my favorite teacher. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights for these true scary teachers and professors ghost stories. The footsteps. Ghosts are definitely not real. Those were my words before we started our trip up to the mountains of Baguio City. A group of delegates from our grade school department were going to a leadership seminar in one of the most haunted places in the Philippines, Teachers Camp. Plenty of ghost stories come from that dreaded place where we were about to stay for 6 days. It was known for its old age and the rumors that it was built on top of a war-related area. People see ghosts of war veterans and enemy soldiers kidnapping women. I thought I could never experience something like that. But I was wrong. First day of the trip was fun as I remember. We went biking around the park there and hung out in the hotel room of one of the delegates' parents. I didn't even think about the place we were really supposed to stay, until of course, I saw our hall in Teachers Camp. The camp itself was enormous, plenty of halls we could have stayed in. But of all of the halls we were assigned to the White Hall, the oldest, and the one in the worst conditions. The floors would creak in every step, and because of an opening between the ceiling and the wall, you could hear anything from chattering teachers to the bags of other dragged on the floor. Our toilets didn't even work well, so every day I dreaded coming back to that hall at night. The long-awaited first night in our room finally came, and as usual, I didn't sleep well. I always have difficulty sleeping, whether at home or at a creepy camp. Room 109 was our assigned quarters. 4 other girls stayed in the room with me, and they were comfortable with the place, just a bit disgusted at the counterproductive toilet. Anyways, as I was saying, I didn't sleep well at all. I was awake until the hours of 11, desperately trying to sleep. Of course, I left the lights on, fearing something might go bump that night. Finally, I fell asleep for around 4 hours, and woke up again at 3 a.m. Screw sleep, I thought. Luckily, I brought an interesting book for my sister. I read undisturbed, yet still a bit paranoid for a few minutes. Until I heard something. Footsteps. Faint, yet coming closer. I stopped reading and waited if they'd actually get louder. They did. Before anything got any louder, I actually peeked outside of my room, finding nothing. But the footsteps kept coming, stronger and closer as it headed down from the stairs across the room. I went back to my bed and just stayed there, sitting upright, my ears eagerly taking in the footsteps. I was nervous. I tried to calm myself, saying there were late guests coming in. But then, the footsteps reached the entrance of the room, so roughly that I felt the bed move whenever it sounded. I freaked and hid my bed under the blankets, hurriedly reciting my prayers while my friends slept soundly. I feared I'd see something that I remember for the rest of my life. The footsteps felt as if they were coming towards my bed, then it stopped. I lifted enough courage to look up from my blanket. I saw a white, shady figure with a somewhat bloodied face. It was only for a few seconds until I got the urge to hide myself from it. I hid under the blanket again, The footsteps ensued, but this time grew fainter and fainter until it was gone, like the figure. I was so scared I could barely get to sleep. For the passing days in room 109, nothing else happened. I told my friends about this ghostly experience and they laughed about it. I know what I saw, whether it was a ghost or just my mind playing paranoid tricks on me. I still go to teacher's camp and I still hear stories of the hauntings, even ones similar to mine, but hearing or reading ghost stories can never amount to the thrill of experiencing one. My history teacher stories. Just to clarify, at the end of term, our history teacher told us some of his paranormal experiences. I shall tell these stories as if I was him, so I'll be using I instead of he. Brother's ghost. My brother got a motorbike for his 18th birthday. He was riding it about a week after he had bought it, and he ended up having a collision with a lorry and went into hospital. He died a couple days later. A few years later, me and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, were going down to her mom's house for tea. We were waiting for them to get home as they were running late. All of a sudden, the car went freezing cold and I could see my breath. I looked up to see a motorbike kind of hovering above the ground, coming right towards us. We were both terrified. We thought it was going to hit us when all of a sudden it disappeared. By the way, it was my brother's birthday. Haunted new house. When I bought my first house with my wife, it had a basement with a big old-fashioned fireplace which we used as a living room. We were downstairs and my wife was making sandwiches and I went to the toilet. Whilst I was using the toilet, I saw a figure in the bath, but I could only see half of it. I quickly turned my head towards the bath and then laughed because it was my shirt which was drying out. I went downstairs and my wife asked me who I was talking to whilst in the bathroom. When I said no one, she said that she definitely heard me talking to someone with a harsh voice that sounded slightly demonic. I went downstairs and started to read my newspaper when suddenly my wife shrieked. I ran into the kitchen and asked her what was wrong. She told me that it had just felt like someone had dragged a sharp knife down her back, but there was no mark. We got a new house a few years later and we had a bad slug problem since it was summer. They slithered under the door into the kitchen. One night, I awoke to an extremely loud heartbeat-like noise. I went downstairs in a trance-like state without turning on any of the lights, and every time I got closer to the kitchen, the noise got louder and louder and louder until I got into the kitchen and flickered on the lights. The noise then stopped, and I saw a big brown slug in the middle of the kitchen, which was too big for it to have slip under the door. I threw it in the bin and went back to bed. I went next door the next day, and my neighbor told me that last night, their daughter, who was staying over downstairs, suddenly started screaming, and the lights turned on and off all on their own, the exact same time as my experience. Just remember, these are my stories, so don't criticize me if you don't believe them. The alumnus teacher in Kwashi. Miss Kuddle was our batch advisor for graduating batch 2005. She has no husband and has dedicated her whole life in making Kwazan City science students' life better. She is the last surviving teacher from the establishment of the school 40 years ago. Since it was almost March at that time, we have been practicing the junior and senior prom nights. We were maintained in a line inside the big covered court because of the hot blaze of the sun outside. It was almost afternoon. Me and my friend Pee decided that we would leave the court and stay in the gazebo to play chess together with the others, because we believe that the practice is such a waste of time. We told our advisor that we would just go to the restroom because she wouldn't permit us to leave the practice. As we're about to run to the gazebo, Miss Cuddle caught us and we made an excuse that we're just gonna back to the CR thing. Of course, She got that easily and were forced to go back to practice. She knew that we were lying. When we got back to our lines, I saw Miss Cuddle alone looking at our batch. To avoid detection, because she might tell our teacher that we tried to escape, I just didn't take a glance at her at all. Mrs. Gavo gave an announcement. I was so shocked when she said that Miss Cuddle died in the hospital, 6 a.m. in the morning because of bone cancer. We tried to find her, but she was not there. Even for that last and final moment, she did her role as our batch advisor and Shinton mentor. Ghosts that come and go. My family and I live in a university campus. My father is a professor and we had to move to a house that's near the campus. The problem is the house. We moved here almost 4 years ago. The first creepy happening occurred about a month after we moved here. I was a super nerd bookworm and I was reading in my room, and I had a feeling of being watched. I felt like someone was watching me from my doorway. At first I ignored it, but it wouldn't go away. I knew I was alone in the room. Finally I had to look, but there was no one there. I didn't go away. But I finally had to go downstairs because I was getting really scared. I wanted to tell my mom, but I decided against it. She would not believe me. The feelings of being watched continued. Then, there was something even more weird. My door would open on its own. It would happen a lot, and most of the time there was no wind. It happened at night too, and that is when I would get really freaked out. I just pulled the covers over my head and tried to go to sleep. The weirdest thing is that it would only happen to my bedroom door, no other doors in the house. It was driving me insane, but there was nothing I could do about it. I even considered trying to talk to whatever was causing it, but I did not have the courage. Then, 3 months after our arrival, things started disappearing. I would lose things like hairpins, the remote control, and pencils. Anyone can lose track of stuff like that, but I was sure I had left them in a table or on my bed. And then, I would go off looking for them, only to find them where I left them 5 minutes later. It continued until the summer when my cousin, Maria, came to visit me. We get along really well, and I told her everything that had happened. She said she thought it was ghosts. It was reasonable. I had thought of that too, but I really wanted to make sure I wasn't letting my imagination take over. My parents are so scientific, and they are always saying to find a logical explanation before considering to the paranormal. They say that to my aunt, who is a great believer in these things. I told Maria that, and the ghost must have heard, 'cause that night, I was convinced my imagination had nothing to do with it. Maria and I were talking in my room before we went to bed, and the door started to open. I was used to that. I got up to close it, and just as I was reaching for the knob, it closed again. On its own. Maria freaked out, but I decided to stay calm, and I assured her that it was only the wind, but there was no wind. I did calm her down, though. I think the ghost got mad because that night I was awakened by Maria's screams. She had a nightmare. She dreamt that someone was murdering her in my room. Then, I really started getting scared, but I didn't show it. There were no more disturbances that night. After that, it stopped for 2 years. I thought they were gone, that they had given up trying to scare me, but now they're back, or it's back. And this time, I tried to stay calm to make them go away, but again, it is not working. It started to come back in June, a week before summer vacation. I was at the computer and I felt like someone was touching my hair. I looked behind me and there was no one. Sometimes I feel a hand on my shoulder or on my arm. A week ago, my little sister was playing with her stuffed animals in her room. I was babysitting her because my parents were out visiting some friends. She put one stuffed animal on a chair. The stuffed animal fell off, but it landed about 3 feet away from the chair. I picked it up and put it back. It was thrown again. This time harder. I picked it up and placed it on the bed. I was getting really scared. This had never happened before, but I said nothing. My little sister was curious to find out if this would happen again, so she put it on the chair again, but nothing happened. Instead, a doll fell from a shelf. We ran out of the room, and we stayed outside playing with a ball until my parents came home. That was about 2 o'clock, and my parents didn't come back until 5. I wanted to tell my parents, but they would not believe me. My dad is a mathematician, and my mom is a chemist. They base everything on science. If I told them, they'd probably send me to a psychologist. My sister is only 4 years old, but she is amused by it, though. I don't think she realizes how weird it is. This stuff has continued, and I feel watched sometimes. I want to get rid of them. Can anyone help me?